Yes, we have a quorum. Let me call roll.
Our meeting from last night, that was the meeting dated December 14th. We're now December 15th. The item is redistricting. Tony, could you please call the roll?
Jimenez. Jimenez. I see his name online,
Okay.
but I'm not hearing him. I saw that he unmuted, but so I don't know if, okay, so the next person online is Perales.
I'm here as well.
Okay.
All right, we'll get the kinks worked out.
Cohen. Carrasco. Davis.
Here.
Esparza.
Here.
Arenas. Foley.
Here.
Mahan.
Here.
Jones. Liccardo.
Um,
Tony, can you hear me? This is Sergio. I'm here.
I can hear you now.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if we can just, I know we got a lot of feedback on a couple responses. I assume folks are adjusting volumes right now. Okay. All right, we'll resume the meeting then. I'd like to ask if our city clerk and each of our council members can be as clear as possible. I know we're going to have various motions, and I'd ask our city clerk to record each of the specific changes made in each of the motions, and then that we're going to post those at some point on the screen so everyone can follow along and know exactly what changes are being made. I know there have been concerns in the past about that. We want to make sure that this process is as transparent as possible. And so we'll identify specific neighborhoods in specific districts with each motion. And hopefully we'll also have the benefit of some analysis as we're moving along about the impacts on issues relevant to our task like deviation. Before I jump in, I know there was an initial question about the maps that Chris presented, and I believe that where we left off last week was that there would be an option for the council to consider in districts 2 and 10. And Chris, you presented a map yesterday that had only one of those two options. I just want to clarify that you have both options.
Yeah, so I have a short presentation if you want to go over the two like the current map version and then the alternative.
Sure. Why don't we do that, and then we'll go to council comments.
Okay. So the map version 1, which is in your packets, it was made by motion on December 9th, and it includes the Councilmember Peralez's changes to District 3, 4, and 6, Councilmember Carrasco's changes to District 5 and 8, and Councilmember Arenas' changes to District 7 and 8. Its total population deviation is 10.2%. And just the highlights, so you can see District 10 is underpopulated by 5.3%, and District 4 is overpopulated by 4.9%. Now these are all rounded to the nearest 1/10 of a percent. So it's a little bit under this, but it's over 10%, so it needs to have some changes. But I just wanted to highlight some of the high water marks for minority representation. These are the green boxes are districts where there's 40% or more of a minority group by citizen voting age population. So Latino CVAP is over 40%. It's at 45.5% in District 5. Asian CVAP is over 40%. It's at 58.2% in District 4, 46.9% in District 7, and 56.5% in District 8. So the alternative version of the map.
Stop you for a moment, Chris. I'm sorry.
Sure.
But the changes you recorded didn't mention Councilmember Foley's changes?
I'm sorry, those were also included. This map includes all the motions that were that were approved
Right.
on the 9th. I'm sorry, I did not include
Councilmember
Foley's
Foley?
in the description, but it was included in the map itself.
All right.
I
Okay.
apologize.
Okay, thank you.
This alternative version would include the motion made by Councilmember Mahan to change the District 2 and District 10 lines to align more to the current version. This deviation is at 9.2% or 9.1%. I can't even read my own slide. I'm sorry. This is the alternative map. You can see instead of District 2 and 10 kind of being split on a like an east-west line, this is like a north-south line, like the current lines are. This deviation, again, total deviation is 9.1%. And you can see the same 4 districts have populations of the minority CVAP over 40%. Latino CVAP is at 45.5% in District 5. And then Asian CVAP is at 58.2% in District 4, 46.9 in 7, and 56.5 in 8. Those are, this is the alternative plan that is on the table. There's also, of course, additional changes you could make to the map version 1 to bring it into compliance in a different manner.
Okay, would you like to talk about your proposed changes to bring version 1 into compliance?
Sure. Well, beyond the alternative that I just presented, or?
Well, yeah, I guess the alternative you mentioned yesterday, you just mentioned moving a neighborhood. We ought to know clearly what neighborhood you're moving and.
Well, I think this is a question for the council, but let me just show you. There's options to move. Let me just turn on. So the issue really is District 10 needs to grow. So there are a couple neighborhood splits along its northern border. So you could move District 10 up to this line to unify Fox Chase and Oak Ridge. You could also move it north to include the Dentwood neighborhood, or you could move it north slightly to include Dartmouth. I think all of those would cause the deviation to come down. The other option, of course, would be moving along the District 10 border. You could also move, you could work in this area of the map. You could move Palma Park up to the 85, and maybe, and maybe the Santa Teresa neighborhood line as well. Those would be easy fixes or slight movements in the map to align to major thoroughfares. But of course, there are other options too to go into.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand clearly what you've just articulated, that you could move from District 2, Palma Park or Parma. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure it's all laid out so people can see options. All right. All right, let's then go to council discussion. As I noted last night, Councilman Reyes, you had your hand up. Would you like to speak?
Sure thing. Good morning, everyone. I'm Councilmember Sylvia Arenas in District 8. Just for those folks, of course, my colleagues know me, but just for those folks who are at home, I wanted to just thank everybody for their comments last night and for their patience. I know that there was close to 200 folks who stayed with us throughout all of the council meeting up until 11 p.m. And I know that last week we had some changes on the fly and some changes that that were done with a lot of thoughtfulness and a lot of consideration. And today I have a memo that I want to talk about. And before I do that, I also want to thank our commissioners who served during pandemic difficult times. And yet they were able to not only produce one map, but 3 maps for all of us. To have more choices and more options. And so I want to thank them also for all of the work that they did. That you also heard last night from a coalition of folks, and I want to thank those representatives who are part of the Si Se Puede coalition, the Real coalition, the Vietnamese American roundtable, the Black Kitchen Cabinet, who was also led by one of my District 8 community leaders, Carmen Brammer. And Councilmember Carrasco, your microphone is on. So anyways, I wanted to thank all of them because of them and because of their coalition and their unity, they were able to express to a number of us some of their concerns, and we listened and heard them, of course, and have come up with a solution that I think is amenable for those folks. And this is highly important, as these are the people that represent all of our communities of color that have been undermined by previous lawmakers every time that there is a census and a redistricting happening. And maybe in the past there hadn't been a lot of controversy around redistricting, but it probably meant that their voices were so muted and so forgotten that it sounded like there wasn't any controversy. But as we know now, that there's folks who have been underrepresented for a really long time, and this provides us an opportunity to undo some of those things. And there's a representative in California who said, you know, the kind of the picking and choosing of different parts of a city or a district or region that had a lot of Latino and Asian and Black representation was like political eminent domain with no return on investment. And that really has stuck to me because I want to make sure that there is a lot of benefit and return to all of our communities. And as you saw last night, as you heard last night, that unity really is our strength among people of color, because we understand what it means to be marginalized. We understand to have our voices so muted that it sounds like we are not speaking. And so sorry, the memo that I have takes all of this in mind. And a number of us have put forward the same memo with that objective of unity and listening to our communities. And so it rebalances the districts in San Jose, while most importantly, avoiding the diminishing power of the communities of color, all of those folks who you heard from last night. And I'm going to make a huge, I'm going to take a risk and make this observation from the comments that were made last night. The people who called in from certain districts and said, please don't break up our neighborhood. It was really not because they were marginalized or they don't have a political voice. It was because of a certain level of comfort. And I, while I can understand that this is not a process that takes into consideration preference and comfort, because what we're trying to achieve is greater than that. So in particular, the map makes some changes to the Canoas Gardens area. And this is really to ensure that communities of color are not removed from District 6. And I understand that there isn't anything that these changes from District 6 and District 9 are defensible. And there isn't anything that from what I understand that that could be pointed out as incorrect. But simply because it is to the letter of the law, it doesn't mean that it's in the spirit of the law. And so I want to make sure that this particular group gets the attention that it deserves. This map, these changes of District 6 and 9 have in this area have a significant number of Black voters, of Latino voters, and of Asian voters. And so, and it's really dense. It's Latino, Asian, and Black, and it's true and it's very diverse. But sending this segment of District 6 to District 9, which is District 9 is the least diverse district in the entire city. And moving it to a district that is less diverse really further marginalizes those groups that I've already spoken and that have already spoken and that you've heard understand what it is to be marginalized. And so there isn't any opportunity for them to create a coalition. And since we have to also consider communities of interest, this isn't a community of interest that I'm going to, even though it's outside of my district, going to speak up for. So my memo corrects that. It also makes some very small changes to reunify Japantown in District 3, restore District 5 boundaries in Little Portugal, and restore some of the boundaries in District 8 as well. And then lastly, we have some technical directions to ensure that the Reed Hillview and while both of these two areas, San Jose State University South Campus Stadium, while both of these are not supposed to have any population, unfortunately, because of the mapping software, it drags population with them when they make some changes. And so that's just the technical issue that got actually worsened since last week. So we wanted to make sure that that was corrected. And lastly, my map builds on what my council colleague Cohen has released in terms of what we're referring to as a Cohen map. And I just want to make one observation about this map. It takes into consideration segments of, I would say, all of the 3 maps. And so in taking from all of the 3 maps, it also considers what those commissioners and what those stakeholders have provided as input throughout this whole time of our commissioners serving. And with it brings community voices. And I just want to make it really clear, because there was a comment that was made at the end of last week that it might lessen the Asian community. And I want to correct that because the Cohen map actually increases the share of our Asian citizen voting age population in districts on average. And it on average, it goes from 34.4 compared to 33.7 by any other map that the council has considered to date. In the community map, it's at 34.1. The commission map is at 34 even. The unity map is 34.1. And the council map that we're labeling, the one that we've been working off of since last week, is 34.3. So that is an increase of any of the other maps that have been considered. It also augments the voices of our Asian community in the densely Asian districts of D1, D2, D4, D5, D7, D8, and D10, increasing by almost 1% compared to our current district lines. So I've said I'm not gonna, in the past, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse because I feel terrible for the horse. But I wanted to make sure that this is loud and clear. There was no maliciousness in reducing Asian voice. My district has an overwhelming number of Asian communities of very diverse countries, and they're my neighbors. They're my community, and together we create a unified voice that will benefit all of San Jose. And so I just wanted to make sure that I spoke up and clarified that. And lastly, that has nothing to do with this, but I want to say it because I think it's in the spirit of making sure we elevate each other. I think you all have received an email from my former chief of staff, Patrick McGarity, and currently I have the first Vietnamese American chief of staff, and we really should not be saying first of anything at this point, but yet we are saying first Vietnamese American as my chief of staff, who is Nancy Lay, and I couldn't be more proud of this accomplishment. She does her job well, regardless of her ethnicity. But I do want to make that note to make sure that that voice is there. So I'm moving my memo forward. Thank you.
Second.
I'm sorry, is that the memorandum that is dated December 14th?
Yes, it
Councilor
is.
Moranis? Okay. So what I think is going to be important is for the clerk to post that. Is there a second on that motion?
Second, yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear. Was that Councilmember Esparza?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask the clerk to post that on the screen so folks can be able to see it at home. At least the first page. Yeah, the first page contains all the recommendations. So that way there's no ambiguity. I'm going to just recite it very quickly so everyone is clear about what it is. It is to adopt the Cohen map, reject the council map version that was brought forward, adopt the Cohen map that was brought forward on last week with the following limited changes relating to, first, adopting limited corrections proposed by Councilmember Perales to move Japantown, Hyde Park entirely within District 3, adding a portion of the Canoas Gardens neighborhood to District 6, revising the boundary of Districts 5 and 8 to, I believe, move Ocala and Hillview back to 5 and 8 out of District 7, revising the boundaries of District 5 and 3 in Little Portugal to reflect the current council lines, and moving South Campus, the unpopulated portion of South Campus of San Jose State University to District 7. So those are the proposed changes, just so everyone's clear about this motion. Okay. Vice Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to start out by saying that I still, am very unhappy about this whole process and the position that we're in right now. I originally wanted to start out with the commission map and then make the changes from there. But we are where we are. And I'm having some challenges with new proposals and new maps that are coming before us, especially as we've already gone down the path of working on an existing map, as well as all the public input that we had in the public discussion. So I want to have some consistency in the process, and you guys who served with me for a period of time know that I'm always talking about process. And I think by having a process, we could eliminate some of the chaos and confusion that we're experiencing. So I want to make a substitute motion, and I'm going to go really slow so everybody can follow along. So I want to start the deliberations by starting out with, which is identified as Council Map Version 1, corrected 2.9. And I want to adopt changes that were suggested today from redistricting partners to move a small neighborhood or neighborhoods from D2 into D10 to ensure the D10 population and overall map is within the plus minus 10% allowable population variance. To revise the changes suggested last week that will reduce the Asian American population in D10, we're going to change that map to move the Hillview area between Story, King, and Ocala back to D5 from D7, moving Little Portugal back to D3 from D5 as reflected in the current D3, D5 boundaries adopted in 2011. This is necessary to accommodate the population change in A. Moving Aborn, Silver Creek back to D7 from D8, and to accommodate a technical problem with the mapping tool, move Reed Hillview Airport to D8 from D5, so that this population correctly shows as being in D8 as it is today, while noting that the airport itself will remain in D5 as it is today, once this technical problem is fixed. So that's my motion.
Second.
Okay. Is it,
And Vice Mayor, can I just ask a point of information just to clarify? When your comment on the D10, D2, what was your suggestion on that again?
So the suggestion was to adopt the changes suggested by today by redistricting partners to move a small neighborhood or neighborhoods from D2 into D10 to ensure the D10 population overall map is within the plus minus 10% allowable population variance.
So I agree with the goal. Can I offer the friendly amendment of leaving that bifurcated for council discussion as we move forward? I think we do want to move a neighborhood from D2 into D10, but I don't think we've decided which one yet.
Yeah, council member, I actually wanted to just make this an up or down vote for the sake of my own sanity. So, and then we can make those modifications as the discussion takes place.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
I also, just a point of clarification also. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask if we could get that map up so we can see what was just proposed.
yeah, so what we need to do, I think, with Chris's help, and let's just clarify, Vice Mayor, you're starting essentially with council version 1, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yeah, I mean, my question was because the one on the agenda is version 2, and so I wanted to find out just where's the link to version 1.
There was a mix-up, I guess, or some confusion with the naming of the maps. So it's my understanding that it's council map version 1, corrected 2.9. I'm sorry, 12.9.
okay, that's the one that's online, at least the link that I see. It says council map version 1 corrected 12 underline 9.
We just have can somebody just read out the code that we can put it?
Oh, the URL?
Yeah, just the numbers at the end that identify the map.
It's not in districtor.
Oh, version 1 is not? Oh, okay.
No.
It's not in districtor.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get there then, I guess.
Can you repeat that,
Yeah.
please?
Apparently, what's posted online
It's,
in the clerk's agenda is not on districtor.
correct.
It's not
Districtor is
what?
for
I
public.
can't, oh,
So just to remind the council, districtor is for public submissions of district maps.
Okay.
Maps generated by redistricting partners, we don't draw into districtor because we can't make them perfect because we have to hand draw them. So we provide HTML, Google Maps, we provide the shapefiles to your GIS department. We do the atlases so that you guys can see the versions that we produce internally.
Okay, so let me go through what's been proposed and seconded, just so everyone's clear, and hopefully then the clerk's office will also be able to demonstrate and display it. We're starting with council version 1, council map version 1, although it's labeled version 2 in the link, but apparently it's version 1 when you pull it up. Am I right about that, Tony?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm
Yeah,
confused as well.
well, I'm looking at it right
I mean,
now.
that's
and
the most current version I have. We were calling it version 2. We weren't calling it corrected version 1.
Well, here's the problem. We just had Chris present 2 versions, 1 and
Right.
2. And version 1 sounds an awful lot like what is version 1 in the map that's displayed when we hit the link and go online. Version 2, as Chris described, was the amendment included the amendment made by Councilmember Mahan, which has a smaller deviation, but a north-south vertical line running through districts 2 and 3. So I'm assuming the version 1 is version 1 in both what Chris described and what is displayed to the public when you hit the link on the map. So that's version 1. So we're all on the same page here. Okay, so we're starting from that map, and that is in the agenda. We would be moving a neighborhood or neighborhoods from District 2 to 10 to correct for the excessive deviation in population that Chris has described, because that is currently 10.2%. It needs to come down well below 10%. So there's some to be determined neighborhoods that we're going to need to move across that line. Then, as I also heard, I heard moving the following neighborhoods: Hillview back to District 5, I believe, and Ocala back to District 8, out of District 7. Those were 2 moves that had been made by this council last week. And you'll recall I raised concerns about the dilution of Asian American vote in District 7, and it appears that that would address that concern. There's also a movement of Little Portugal back to District 3, where it is currently, out of District 5. That was also a change made last week, but would return. So all 3 of those would return boundaries to where they are today and have been for the last 10 years. For Hillview, Ocala, and Little Portugal. And then some movement to ensure that the airport remains in District 5, with the populated census tract around that airport would remain District 8. And finally, Aborn Silver Creek would go back to District 7 from District 8. Did I get that correctly, Vice Mayor? Okay. So I'm inclined to support that for a couple of reasons. One is I think it's a really good idea for us to start where we left off, and the council and everyone and the public, most importantly, has been tracking what we're doing, and I think it's good to at least start where we ended up. Secondly, I think it's good for us to correct what we think are problems that need correcting. And so far, I've heard that there are 2 concerns. One is the deviation, the excessive deviation that Chris described, and that's why there's an attempt to move a neighborhood from D2 to D10. And secondly, there's a concern about potential dilution in District 7 of the Asian American community there because it would appear to be a district of concern for federal Voting Rights Act purposes. So I'm going to support this. I think this is a good place to start. I know that there are going to be other motions, but I think it's good to start where we left off because that is the most transparent way to do it. There's been a lot of dialogue about this map over the last week. Let's at least start so we're not confusing people with new maps that are created, you know, on a moment's notice. Okay.
And Mayor, sorry, point of information. If we could put the Word doc back up, I saw a reference to D10 and Hillview in the same sentence, which I'm pretty sure is inaccurate. I just want to make sure that we've got this motion correctly recorded.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So move the small neighborhoods from D2 into D10 to ensure the variance is within 10%. Okay, and is that along the east-west or the north-south version of the map if we're reverting back?
That's the east-west version because
okay.
that's version 1.
That's version 1, okay.
Yeah.
And then the next sentence here, revise the changes last week that will reduce the Asian American population in D10 to move Hillview, and I'm pretty sure that's not D10. Is that D5?
It'd be the population's in D8 and the airport's in D5.
Yeah, I think it would be good for us just to describe the changes and we can talk about the populations afterward. So if the clerk could just focus on what the neighborhoods are first, and that way. Okay, so we're moving Hillview. Okay, and those districts are not accurately described. My understanding, Hillview goes back to District 5, Ocala goes back to District 8. And they both would come from District 7 on the map that the council had approved last week. So it's from District 7. Hillview would go from District 7
to D5.
Back to District 5. Ocala would go from District 7 back to District 8. And it wouldn't be a bad idea if maybe we could just number these so that way people could refer to each move by number. That would be great. Okay, Little Portugal goes back to D3 from D5. I think the rest is accurate based on what I heard, but Vice Mayor or anyone else? Yeah, I just heard Councilmember Foley raise a concern. It says the small neighborhoods. At this point, they're small neighborhoods to be determined. So it's TBD. That's going to be subject to a subsequent motion. We're going to figure out what those neighborhoods are. Let's delete the word the before small because we don't know what they are yet. Yes, I overheard a concern. We just want to make sure there's no confusion. Okay, and so that would move small neighborhoods from D2 to D10 would be 1. Okay. All right. Any other changes? Great. Oh, okay, great. Wonderful. That saves everybody trouble. All right. So any questions or comments on this motion? I'm looking online. Sorry, I'm having a hard time pulling up my Zoom screen. Councilmember, I think, I'm sorry, I gotta get it right. I have Councilmember Perales and Councilmember Jimenez, and I'm trying to remember who was first, or trying to figure that out. Okay, I have Councilmember Perales.
Thanks, Mayor. And can you hear me now? I know we were having audio issues. Okay, good, thanks. So I think, I would agree with the Vice Mayor that the entire process here, at least since last week, and maybe even predating that, is not ideal. Besides the mayor, this is the first I actually, maybe, I don't know if you were, I believe you were part of that. Yes, you were on the council. So besides you, this is our first go at it. And I think that unfortunately, timing has not been ideal due to the pandemic. And then ultimately, getting 3 maps recommended to us was not ideal because it set us up already for sort of, I think, debate on where do we start. And as I mentioned last week, I wasn't as concerned where we started, more where we ended up. And maybe that was part of the issue as well for all of us, because I think individually there were concerns whether we had a perspective from being the representatives of our district, similar to the one issue around Japantown that I recognize it, to nobody's fault, the maps that are currently shown for even through my own district website do not match up perfectly with what Japantown today includes within its neighborhood association. And so some of these nuanced changes in bits of information that council members may have for their own respective districts, I think already we're going to make it into this conversation one way or another, and we're going to amend maps. And so anyways, I would agree with the vice mayor. It's not ideal where we're at, but ultimately, I think even with the vice mayor's suggestions today, we're seeing there's still tweaks and changes that we're going to want to make regardless of where we are starting. And we're kind of, even if we pick it back up where we left last week, we recognize there's some challenges there, and the vice mayor has made some suggestions there. Similarly, I think kind of hitting the delete button and going back to where we started last week and ending up somewhat similar, actually. If I'm not looking at the 2 maps side by side, but clicking back and forth, there are a lot of changes that are matched of what Councilmember Arenas is trying to do with her motion, because of what we've heard. I mean, I too have heard communities like Little Portugal. We obviously heard from a great number of public speakers last night, from our minority communities, specifically Vietnamese community, and a lot of those changes have been incorporated, whether we're looking at Councilmember Arenas' motion or the current motion from the vice mayor. And I think, again, I will have some similar interests or concern. There are some minor cleanups on Councilmember Arenas that I think it's coloring that maybe when people are clicking on the district or map, it doesn't totally line up. I'll save that though for later. But I would prefer to start with her recommendation, and I think either way we're still gonna have to end up with something that hopefully the majority of us can support. So I will not support the current motion on the table, and hope that at some point here we can get to resolution one way or another. Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Jimenez?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I feel the same way as Councilmember Perales does. I think, Vice Mayor, your attempt to get clarity and to bring forward something that was not as complicated as what we've had. I think, unfortunately, it seems to me it's not as clean a version of a map to consider as it was via the motion that was made, the underlying motion. And so I'm not going to be supporting this motion either. I think the memorandum that was put out by several of our colleagues, that is the same memorandum, but I think that really brings forward a cleaner version addressing some of the issues, and I'd really like that to be the starting place of some of these discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, I have a question. I just want some clarification. What I understand Vice Mayor to be trying to do here with this motion is to undo several of the changes that might have diluted Asian American vote in District 7. And I understood that specifically the changes that were made last week to the council from the maps that had been existing for 10 years was first a move of Hillview from District 5 to District 7, and a move of Ocala from District 8 to District 7. Do we have those neighborhoods right? Because I'm getting indications that one of them may not be right. And I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
So I believe Ocala in the current map is in District 8.
It's already in District 8. Okay.
Yeah,
What was
exactly.
the neighborhood that was moved from District 8 to District 7? That was
To District 7?
last week.
I don't, so, I mean, Hillview was moved, and then the Adorn and Silver Creek and Dove Hill were moved into District 8, I believe.
I'm sorry, it was Aborn?
Aborn and Silver Creek and Dove Hill were moved into District 8 from District 7. And then the vice mayor's edit would move Adorn and Silver Creek back into District 7 from District 8. If you'd like, I've made the changes to the neighborhoods that he's outlined on the version 1 map, if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that what we're doing, at least I understood the intent to be, let's undo the changes to District 7's eastern boundary that were made last week. Could you tell us exactly what those are? And then maybe we can correct if there's any disparity.
So do you want me to look? I've corrected the version 1 map with the vice mayor's edits.
Okay.
You want me to show that map?
Sure. Yeah, that would be great. So we understand clearly what we've done, because there've been a lot of changes.
So first off, we moved all of the population back into District 8. We'll cut the census block to ensure that the airport remains in District 5. Ocala, that neighborhood is moved back into District 8. And then Hillview here was in version 1 in District 5. That's been removed. I mean, in District 7. That's moved back into District 5. And then this Adorn and Silver Creek was moved into District 8 in the version 1, but with the corrections from the vice mayor, that's moved back into District 7.
Okay, so
yeah.
So Ocala, there's no need to change because that's already
correct. The other edit too was the Little Portugal change.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If we could just focus on the eastern edge of District 7, I just want to focus your attention there.
So the two swaps were Hillview back into 5 and Adorn and Silver Creek back into 7.
Okay, and that restores the historic eastern boundary of District 7. Is that right?
Well, Dove Hill is currently in District 7.
Oh, right. But
that is now in District 8.
That was part of Councilmember Cohen's original memo.
Correct.
Okay. So with the exception of Dove Hill, now that eastern boundary is restored through what you've just described. Okay, so it sounds like Ocala is not part of it.
Not to my understanding.
Okay. So I guess I want to ask Vice Mayor Jones, just to clarify, is this essentially what you intended, was to roll back the clock?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I would just ask then the clerk to reflect that. It sounds like Ocala is not part of the motion. Is that correct?
So we're not moving Ocala from D7 to D8?
Apparently Ocala is already in D.
Yes.
Okay.
In D8.
It was already in D8 apparently? Okay. It was just right next to a piece. Okay, got it.
So I can modify my motion to just remove Ocala.
Yeah, okay. And that's all right with the seconder?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I cut you off. You wanted to talk about Little Portugal.
Oh, the only other edit was moving the Little Portugal over the portion that is in the current lines into D3.
Right.
So that's this line here.
That restores the historic line from
exactly
the last 10 years. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure we're all clear about the motion. All right. Let's go back to comments and questions. I think I saw a hand online.
Yeah, Esparza.
Councilmember Esparza.
Hi, yes. Chris, I just wanted to go on the map. First, I wanted to address the map issues. Can you load our map, our current map that we're looking at for the public?
Yeah. This is version 1 with the changes from the vice mayor.
Yeah, so can the public see this?
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen.
Okay.
Yes, they can.
Okay, so I wanted to address a couple of things. First off, the memo that was submitted by council members Arenas, Carrasco, and myself yesterday makes these changes. We heard from almost a couple hundred people last night, including the Asian Law Alliance, the Black Kitchen Cabinet, the Vietnamese American Roundtable, and a number of other organizations, the Si Se Puede Collective. And we sat here and listened to 2 hours of people talking that supported that effort, many of whom supported that effort. And supported the memos of council members Arenas, Carrasco, and myself. So I wanted to put that forward. I also wanted to address something that corrects some misinformation out there. The council map actually increases Vietnamese voters by 1% per district in districts 2, 4, 5, 7, and 8. So I just wanted to put that out there so we're being correct when we're talking about Asian voters and in particular Vietnamese voters. I know that we've heard from a lot of people. I just want to recognize the feedback that we heard yesterday and that we heard since last week. This process is indeed frustrating. I think that's something that we can all agree on, starting with 3 maps, having to pick a map, not understanding, being able to get all the information and even the correct map after these exercises, because we have to wait for redistricting partners to then go and finalize it, because what folks can do online isn't 100% accurate. And so I wanted to address those out in the open so that those folks following can understand what is happening and why. And so I will be supporting the underlying motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Esparza. I think if we're on the subject of correcting, then I would say it's certainly easy to conclude, for example, moving Hillview from District 5 to District 7 will increase the number of Asian American voters. The problem is that the percentage of Asian American voters is diluted, that is, it is reduced by moving other neighborhoods into District 7. And that is the point of concern that I raised last week, a very real legal concern under the Voting Rights Act, because District 7 is a Voting Rights Act district of concern with regard to the Asian American community, which is nearly half of the district with regard to voting age population. So while it might be accurate to say you're adding Asian American voters, it would also be quite accurate to say you're diluting Asian American vote and reducing the voting percentage. And that's the relevant consideration legally. All right, Councilmember Arenas.
Thank you. I'm also going to clarify because I don't like to be accused and of diluting anybody's voting rights. I have the brown skin that dilutes my rights within this society automatically without even taking my character or who I am into consideration. And now being accused publicly by you as a mayor that this is what I'm attempting to do. And so I reject that. I'm offended by it. And I want to be very clear that the memo, the underlying memo, achieves equality for all of the people of color that live on the East Side who are my neighbors, have been my neighbors all of my life. I don't know that I can say the same thing for any one of you who haven't been born and lived in San Jose all of their lives. So this to me is very personal. This is the future of my city that I will continue to live in. I didn't just happen to come here. I live here. This is where my childhood is at. This is where my future is, and this is where my children are growing. And so I'm going to reiterate once again that the Cohen map does more for the Asian community, the densely Asian districts, than any other map. And the substitute motion does not correct what my motion doesn't, what people are saying my motion isn't doing. My motion is already achieving that. So there doesn't need to be a substitute motion. The only difference between the substitute motion and my motion is that it's not correcting the D6 and D9 issue. And we're making a big deal here of the Asian vote, which has already been addressed, because nobody wants to talk about how the densely Latino, Asian, and Black areas of Canoa Gardens in District 6 are being moved to District 9, which is the least diverse. It's the whitest of the districts in our city. It's like trying to sweeten up coffee with one piece of sugar, one granular part of the sugar. It'll never happen for those people. They're losing their voices. This could be seen as cracking this community and packing another community. But that perception doesn't seem to be bothering anybody here that is supporting the substitute motion. So I hope that you all can do the right thing by all of our communities, including the Black and Latino communities and Asian communities, all of us together, get the right to have a voice in the district that they're living in instead of being diluted. That's it. I'm obviously not going to support the substitute motion.
Thank you. Councilmember Esparza?
I wanted to raise a similar point. These are our neighborhoods. I've also lived my life in San Jose. I lived my whole life in San Jose. And the fact is that these are neighborhoods with families, with people, with schools, with communities of interest that we know, that we represent. And that's the struggle of this process, is that we're looking out for neighborhoods. We're not making public allegations that aren't true. And the memo that we submitted has the support of the Asian Law Alliance, the Vietnamese American Roundtable, the Black Kitchen Cabinets, and many other organizations that we heard from ours last night. So it's misleading to say that we're not doing that, because we absolutely are. And I hope that their same concern for the voting rights of folks in District 7 extends to the rest of the city, that we look at other neighborhoods, that we look at other parts of the city, and we're as concerned with their voting rights in this process. I will not be supporting the motion on the floor. I will support the underlying motion, which addresses these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's vote now on Vice Mayor's motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. There's a hand up. Here, forgive me. There are two hands up. Councilmember Cohen.
Yeah, just briefly, I just want to say that from the beginning, my goal has been, in addition to doing a good job in redistricting, obviously, has been to have a process that the council can feel comfortable with, that we're proceeding in a logical, forward-moving fashion. And while there's obviously still areas to discuss based on the changes that were made by Vice Mayor Jones's motion, I think that continuing to move forward with a map that we can say the council owns in the process is a more productive way to go, and we clearly then will have the discussions on how to adjust D2, D10 for those changes we need, and how to adjust D69. This map is not a vote on a final map. This map is for how to proceed from last week, and I will support the substitute motion.
Councilmember Mahan?
Thanks, Mayor. And starting on a lighter note, I want to register my complaint with whoever brought the donuts this morning. That was the last thing any of us needed after sitting here for 12 hours yesterday. On a more serious note, there was a lot of rhetoric last night on different sides, and I was particularly disappointed by the script that was repeated, 20, 30, 40 times that stated that Councilmember Davis and I had a plan to suppress the votes of Black, Latinx, Asian, Indigenous voters. And I think it's pretty clear to anyone who's been following our conversations and this process that that's just patently false rhetoric. It is a lie. It's a script that was written and handed to folks who have some other goal. I think it's harmful to our city. You have to have thick skin to be in this job, so I'm not taking it personally, but it's bad for our city to pump people up with a message that we are here trying to suppress votes. And I think, again, if you've been following the process, the very reasonable questions I've raised about swapping 60,000 people between districts 10 and 2 is a rational conversation we can have. In fact, I'm supporting a motion now that orients east-west, and we're going to have that conversation in a logical way. And we'll weigh the pros and cons like any responsible, deliberative body. And as we've been saying, there is no perfect map. This is a difficult process. It requires trade-offs. There's no perfect map. And for the record, I want to also say, because I want to be consistent here, I don't think Councilmember Esparza is trying to suppress votes in District 7. I want to be clear about that. But I think we need to be consistent because there are some real concerns here that need to be addressed. And either Councilmember Esparza and I are both trying to suppress votes, or we're all going through a messy, complicated process of trying to figure out how we create a fair map that does right by our entire community, keeps communities of interest together, abides by the various laws we need to abide by. And the two biggest issues that have come up that we need to resolve in a rational way are the Asian vote dilution in District 7 and the population deviation in District 10. And this motion continues the progress we made last week. It builds on the Cohen map, which builds on the commission map, and it gets us closer to resolving those issues. And I want to be very clear that I don't believe that District 10 should have a significantly smaller population. That would be a problem because it has a larger share of the white vote, and therefore we would be giving more power to white voters if District 10 was significantly smaller than other districts. And once, hopefully, this motion passes, we're going to have a rational conversation about how to rebalance population to deal with that deviation. And similarly, we need to be very careful. Probably the biggest legal risk we face is if we are inadvertently, again, I don't think Councilmember Esparza is trying to suppress voters, but if we inadvertently dilute the vote of Asian American voters in District 7, that is a problem. I think we can all acknowledge that rationally. And so the goal here, and I appreciate the motion, even though I don't agree with everything in it, even though it proposes a very large change to District 10 that I don't like, at least it's an honest attempt to address the two big challenges that have been raised, the two big concerns: the population deviation involving District 10 and the voting age, Asian population dilution in District 7. So for that reason, I'm happy to vote to move us forward. I'm still going to make my case for why I don't love the East-West split, but let's move on with a rational, honest conversation that doesn't accuse people of something incredibly serious and ethically and legally wrong, which is voter suppression, which is clearly not what is going on here. Thank you.
I have hands again from Council Members Arenas and Esparza. I assume those are for new comments. Councilmember Arenas?
Yes, these are new comments. So I'm not sure if I heard it correctly because the underlying motion has Councilmember Cohen's memo. Councilmember Cohen, did I hear you correctly? And were is your position that you were not going to, that you were going to support the substitute motion? Is that what you're saying?
That is what I said.
Okay. And so I wanted to learn a little bit more about that because there's a concern that I raised that is, and this is the huge difference between both of these motions. And that is that, I'm sorry, I'm getting a text from Councilmember Carrasco, and she's asking if she could be allowed to speak. She's on a call, so I think she's having a hard time raising her hand because she's not on Zoom. Okay, so anyways, so the difference is this D6, D9 boundary. And I appreciate, I have huge respect for our vice mayor. I've always seen him as a fair person. We don't always agree, but I think generally we tend to see things kind of in the same way. And of course, no two people ever see things exactly in the same way. So I do appreciate the substitute motion. What I don't appreciate, and I'm going to guess that if I ask for friendly amendment to fix this D69, I'm going to get rejected. And so, Councilmember Cohen, my question for you is, there is a potential for us to be accused of cracking this particular community, which is densely populated with Latino, Black, and Asian communities, to a community, moving it from a community that is more diverse, which is D6, to a community that is the least diverse of all of our council districts, which is D9. And this is one, packing, and two, cracking of this community. So packing in D6 of the white vote, and cracking of the Latino, Black, and Asian. They're all three of these groups live densely in these neighborhoods. And so I'm asking for you to really reconsider your position so that these neighborhoods could also have a voice and continue to have potentially a more unified voice and opportunity in D6. They will lose any opportunity in D9. They will be lost. They will never have any chance of ever creating a coalition in D9. It's just not realistic. And so, and currently in the substitute motion, it's almost impossible to fix this issue, on this Canoas issue, because D9 is too small. So it's meant not to fix this Canoas issue. And so in the same way that some of my colleagues have been very candidly, very offhandedly accusing some of us for suppressing the Asian vote, and I corrected and made sure that I stand my ground. I continue to stand my ground. There is no dilution of Asian vote, but here we see a clear case of dilution of Latino, Black, and Asian vote, yet there is no upheaval about it. None whatsoever. You heard from our communities last night. They were up in arms and they recognized this issue. And so I'm asking you to really reconsider supporting the underlying motion. And let me just mention that in the Canoas Garden area, the population is roughly 4,200. Of that, the Latino population is 43%. The Asian population is 20.3%. the white population is 23% and Black is 8.7. And so it just boggles me that we're not discussing this and pretending that this is not an issue that we need to fix. It really boggles me how selective we are being in the communities that we are hoping not to dilute. And so I'm asking you to please reconsider your position.
Vice Mayor?
Oh, yeah, Councilmember Reyes, I just want to just respond to your question or statement about a friendly amendment. And the only reason why I'm not taking any friendly amendments on this motion, again, is just so I can maintain my sanity. So I want to let you know that it's not that I have an opposition or resistance specifically to your amendments. And the other thing I wanted to say too is, at no point in my motion do I want it to be interpreted or implied that any members of the council, you and my other council colleagues, are trying to suppress votes, manipulate votes, or do anything that's going to be detrimental to any one group. So I just want to make sure that that's very clear as well.
Okay. Let's go to Councilmember Esparza.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if Vice Mayor could reconsider the same thing, but he just answered that. And again, I think if we're concerned about voting rights in one part of the city, we need to be concerned about voting rights in all the parts of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Carrasco?
*6 to unmute if you're on your phone.
Councilmember Carrasco, I'm not sure if you heard that. *6 to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you so much. Wow, this was a bit of a trickster for me. Thank you so much. And I hate the fact that I haven't been able to zoom in, but having horrible audio issues. And so if you can't hear me at any point, please let me know immediately. Thank you for the conversation. And first of all, I want to thank all of the speakers that came out yesterday and the folks also that reached out to me throughout the week and who were eager to work with my office and with Councilmember Arenas, Councilmember Esparza, Councilmember Perales. Of course, we're in a BA to really make sure that the voices of our communities were heard and that we did everything possible to make this as inclusive as could be. What I love about San Jose, and the reason why I'm still here, I'm not still here because I'm a council member. I'm here because I'm raising my children, the last 3 of my 4, and hope that they will consider this to be their home in the future and that they will raise their children and that we will continue the legacy of the Carrasco family, of the Carrasco clan. We love San Jose. My parents helped build San Jose. We've been here for at least the last, my mother died at the age of 90. My father died at the age of 93. He'd be 101 today, this year. And so we've been here for at least 90 years. And like Councilmember Arena said, we were transplanted from Mexico, but it was 90 years ago. So I was born and raised here, and so were my children. And I've grown up with the city of San Jose and love the diversity. And this is about one of the most important moments that any country can undertake, which is the redistricting to make sure that we have the representation and that the representation looks like the city that it represents. And of course, it started a year ago when we were doing the census count. And this is why it's so important. And so I'm just saying that so that we can connect the dots. So forgive me if I sound like a broken record. But especially given the historical moment that we've seen ourselves in the last 24 months with the pandemic and trying to come out of it and making sure that people recover, this is important, and this is why so many folks are engaged. Last week, when we were up at the dais trying to figure out how to give people voice and give them representation, we went back to the drawing board. We met with folks, and we presented to the council and to our mayor a map that we thought was more inclusive and gave greater voice to our community. Mayor, I understand your position, but I would refrain from making snap judgments and the tone of there's a bit of a condescending tone when I hear you speak, and I try to refrain on many times when I don't always agree with you. On this one, I have to respectfully make my feelings known that it feels very disrespectful, and it feels a little bit like jockeying as we're entering a very what I consider an ugly moment in every city every 2 to 4 years as elections come around. And so what I'm going to say to my colleagues is the following. The city is only going to become more and more diverse, and diversity and growth sometimes feels very uncomfortable. What is very glaring to me were the statistics that Councilmember Arenas just read off. In the Canoas area, it's it's a very diverse area, and to shift it over to a very to a district that is not diverse, that's exactly what we're trying not to do, which is to dilute that minority voice.
Councilmember Carrasco,
So,
could I offer just a suggestion on that issue? Because I
Can I
hope
just
this will
finish?
resolve it. I'm quite certain, Vice Mayor made it clear, this is not the final motion. And I expect we will have a motion and a discussion on Canoas Garden. But that's not.
Mayor, I've held my tongue partly because I have had audio difficulties, so I'd like to just be able to express myself, and then we can go ahead and
Sure, but
and
that's
finish
not
making
part of
whatever
this
motion.
motion. You can make that motion, and we will have a discussion on Canoas Garden. I assure you of that fact.
Thank you. I'd like to just be able to finish my comment, because I think that as we continue on with the motions, I hope that we will be able to refer to this. And one of the things that I want to make clear is that I want to point out to one number that is of particular interest, I hope, for everybody, but I hope also for Vice Mayor. In those numbers, 8.7% of the population is of African American descent. And in the past several months, Vice Mayor, you have made several motions and put forward several propositions to make sure that our African American community is not left behind, whether it's home ownership or small businesses, but making sure that our very small, dwindling African American community is not forgotten, continue to be disenfranchised, or continue to be suppressed or oppressed. You've made quite many progressive motions in hopes that we would go ahead and support it, and I've supported it wholeheartedly. I hope that as we move forward with these attempts to give our community voices, that we keep in mind that our African American voices are very few. There's very few left in the city of San Jose, but in Canoas Garden, 8.7% of the population there happens to be Black. So with that, I will not be supporting the current motion that's on the table, and I hope that my colleagues understand the great ramifications that are involved in supporting this, and hope that you will support the underlying motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And let me just emphasize again, Vice Mayor Jones specifically made a motion that contemplates additional motions because there's still unnamed neighborhoods to be moved. and I expect there will be a motion and a discussion on Canoas Garden. So this is not somehow or another subverting that discussion. We're simply trying to start where we left off. Councilmember Jimenez.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question, and I suspect it may fall on deaf ears, given Vice Mayor's reluctance to accept any any amendments. And this isn't necessarily an amendment, but I think the conversation around D2, D10, it seems to me that D10 needs a little bit more population. So the presumption in the motion going forward is that population is going to come from District 2. But I think the consultant mentioned that some population can also be taken from District 9. And so I'm wondering if the Vice Mayor is open to either pulling that population either from District 2 or District 9 and not be set specifically to District 2, which I don't necessarily see a compelling reason to do that only from District 2 or consider only from District 2.
I'll respond. Councilmember Jimenez, I'm open to all possibilities in the discussion. We're just voting on what map we start out with, and then we'll have individual votes after that to make any changes. So this is not the final map that we're gonna approve. So
I completely understand that, and I think the underlying sentiment of some of my colleagues that maybe not be supporting this, including myself, is that we understand. I think it's clear as day that this is not the final map. You're moving forward an initial recommendation, which we know is going to morph and change and grow or decrease or whatever in certain areas and certain numbers. But what I know to be true is oftentimes where we start off sort of determines where we end up. And that's one of the concerns I have. And so that's why I was asking for that consideration. But it seems like you're unwilling to do that. So thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Councilmember Cohen.
Yeah, just since I was addressed before, I'm just going to make a clarifying statement of my position here. My position was a process position. As I said specifically, we will need to have a detailed discussion on the D69 boundary, and I'm sure a detailed discussion will occur on D2 and D10. That's where, regardless of which map, I think is going to be a potentially lengthy discussion on each of those issues. Councilmember Arenas, you're making a good argument for a case in the D69 boundary that I look forward to continuing in the discussion and figuring out how we resolve. But my vote is simply on a process of where we start in order to have that discussion. So just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, and I just add, in terms of where we draw population to increase District 10 to reduce that deviation, that is a very significant legal concern. I would just point out that District 9 has a population, at least according to the map that were provided online, is 98,800, about 98,900 voters. District 2 has a population of 100,700 voters, roughly. Obviously, it makes sense to be drawing a population from a district that's larger. That's why I thought going to District 2 made sense in the original motion. Okay, let's vote.
Jimenez?
No.
Hold on, I'm going to share my screen. Perales?
No.
Cohen?
Aye.
Crosco?
No.
Davis?
Yes.
Esparza?
I'm voting for this to restore District 7. Yes.
Arenas?
No.
Foley?
Yes.
Mahan?
Yes.
Jones?
Aye.
Liccardo?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, we can now take subsequent motions. I know that we definitely have work to do regarding District 10 population, but we'll take whatever motion comes forward. Councilmember Mahan?
Well, Mayor, I just thought we could start on that discussion of District 10 and District 2, and I was a little surprised that I thought where we ended last time was that we had two equally viable approaches. We had an east-west boundary and the existing north-south boundary, and then a proposed east-west shift. And the position I've taken all along is that if the problem we need to solve, which I think is the focus here, is addressing the population deviation, I think that can be just as well resolved north-south as we currently are as east-west. So my proposal is to look at north-south and then move a neighborhood or two neighborhoods from District 2 into District 10 to balance the two in a more logical way. I think there are communities of interest along the Monterey, both the Monterey corridor and down along the Santa Teresa corridor that could just as easily exist in districts 10 or 2. And I guess what I'm asking is what I asked last week and didn't get an answer to is, what is the compelling reason for moving 60,000 people between two districts when we can move an adjacent neighborhood or two and balance the population much more closely and achieve that goal? And I haven't heard a compelling reason. There are a lot of reasons that the district tends to run north-south in terms of school districts and transportation lines and commercial centers, things we've discussed before. I also will say, I think having socioeconomic diversity in the districts is a good thing. My office spends a lot more time in the northern part of the district because there is more homelessness there, and speeding is more rampant, and there are extra resources that our office can put into those neighborhoods because of that diversity. In fact, I know it's not up for discussion now, but in the Hoffman-Viamonte district, our office actually has a dedicated staff person who focuses full-time on the one gang hotspot in District 10. So I am personally concerned. I'd like to hear from Councilmember Jimenez what his perspective on this is. I am concerned about polarizing and socioeconomically dividing our districts and moving 60,000 people without a rationale. Every other move we make on this map is a measured move, neighborhood by neighborhood, community of interest by community of interest, to balance population. We're moving the boundaries at the edges of each district to create a balanced and fair map. And yet, for some reason, in 10 and 2, without a stated rationale, and I've asked for that rationale, we are talking about flipping a third of each district. So my proposal, but I'll again, is to go back to the north-south boundary that we have and where we left off as one of our two equally viable options we said last week, which is north-south, and then discuss which neighborhood or neighborhoods from 2 would need to go into 10 to better balance out population. Councilmember Jimenez, I guess I'd just ask you, since this is our shared border and this affects the communities we both represent, and I've spent a lot of time in the last week talking to residents in District 10. I'm sure you've done the same in District 2. I guess I'd like to just hear a little bit of your perspective on what I'm describing. And, the starting place of going back to north-south, as I suggested last week, is that it actually has a lower population deviation. And it keeps a number of communities of interest intact. So there's just a lot of reasons in my mind, and I'm ultimately open to voting for a map that doesn't have that orientation. I don't have an agenda here other than what's best for the residents of District 10 and ultimately the residents of the whole city. So anyway, I guess, Councilmember Jimenez, if you're willing, could you just help me understand your perspective on that boundary, and if there are specific neighborhoods or communities of interest you think clearly belong in District 10 or 2 and why?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that, Councilmember Mahan. I very much appreciate it. Since the last meeting, I've had some time to dig into certainly the demographics of the areas, and they're pretty similar. I often told people that District 2 really is a microcosm of the city, and I think the northern portion of District 10 really mirrors that. And so, listen, I think the Cohen map, the reason I was supportive of the Cohen map, which, by the way, I had no part in drawing or suggestions as to where the line should be. I think Councilmember Cohen made a good attempt that I think addresses some of the things that come to mind for me. So I think it makes common sense changes, the District 2, District 10 border, the essentially ceding some of the northern part of District 10 to District 2, and District 2 ceding some of the southern part to District 10. And I really do think that it better aligns the respective communities of interest in District 2 and District 10. So let me give you an example. In the area that is to become District 2, in the northern part of District 10, anecdotal evidence tells us that the renters, Black folks, Asian folks, Latino voters in Edenvale and along the Capitol Expressway, that really they share common concerns related to transit, affordable housing, tenant protections, which are a common theme in District 2. Now, likewise, the area that would become District 10 up against the Santa Teresa foothills, similarly in that area, really Almaden Valley, Santa Teresa foothills share interest in protecting open space, limiting density, and preserving single-family neighborhoods, such as opposition opportunity housing, which you are very aware of. The preservation of the view sheds, concerns over fires, and interest in common trail network, as is consistent with, I believe, a lot of the D10 general interest that I've heard in the many years that I had working with Councilmember Camas. I think the Cohen map also takes into consideration some of what the city charter specifies as it relates to natural boundaries, geography, cohesiveness, and of course, the threshold issue of deviation, which I think his map addresses, and where there are no issues, right? Essentially, the reason we're having these issues is because there's been modifications made to the Cohen map. Right now, the deviations have changed and things of that nature, right? And so the other thing I would say, Councilmember Mahan, is that you know, sometimes some of the fundamental questions are, well, what's the problem we're trying to fix, right? Let me just say first that this process allows us to make adjustments to maps and community representation without solving for a problem, if you will. What I believe is that improving upon the existing boundaries and bringing together communities of interest is a worthwhile effort, and I think it should be done. And I appreciate the fact that you have a lot going on in your district, in all parts of the district, as do I, right? And I don't take this suggestion of essentially swapping of you say 60,000 people, which is it's under that, but I get your point. You know, I've spent a lot of time cultivating relationships and advocating for projects in, say, Los Paseos or Santa Teresa foothills. But, you know, we aren't sending these constituents off to an island without representation. You can rest assured, and I'd like to think you do the same, in that we're going to continue to support the residents in whatever district they fall into, right? And so the folks aren't going to be left without representation. And so with that being said, that is sort of the rationale, right? I think it makes sense. I think it's consistent with the character and the geography of what is District 10 and the Santa Teresa foothills area that I would be seating. I think is consistent with some of the things that you already deal with consistently in your area. And as a matter of fact, the dividing line currently between District 2 and District 10 is Snell Avenue. And you know as well as I do that there's a neighborhood association there called the Santa Teresa Foothills Neighborhood Association that goes across both districts, District 2 and District 10. And so your office and Councilmember Camas before you in my office for many years has staffed that neighborhood association, and they're very active. And so we see examples of this working. Now, I do understand that the northern part of District 10, it's mainly comprised of VEP, which is Vista Park, Encore, and Parkview Valley. And I know one of the things I recognize is those are mainly single family homes, and they do, I think, you know, I try to run numbers, but I think it makes up about 90% of the area that we're going to be taking into District 2. And I think I've estimated that there's probably about 2,800 families, but and they certainly have expressed concerns about moving into District 2. And I think it's important to point out that I think your chief of staff is the president of that neighborhood association. So that creates just a very unique circumstance. But there's also several apartment complexes that are not part of VEP that I think would benefit from some of the work we're doing in District 2. And some of those are the Woods, which has close to about 2,000 units and maybe about 2,000 families, in addition to some other apartment complexes that just aren't part of VEP. Likewise, the northern part of District 10 abuts up against Monterey Road, which quite frankly, a lot of people already think that it's part of District 2. If you look at the Monterey corridor from Center down to Branham, where the District 2, District 10 boundary is, essentially one side the Union Pacific Railroad is District 10 and one is District 2. And my office has taken on that role and leadership on addressing some of the issues along that corridor for many years. And so, I think it's quite natural just to blend in that whole area and make it District 2. Additionally, as you well know, the emergency interim housing project that you've been moving forward, which I'm supportive of on the corner of Branham Lane East and Monterey Road, that's at the tip of District 2, and most folks think that's District 2. And so, again, common issues that we've been dealing with in District 2, and that's why I think these communities of interest, I think, fall very neatly and tightly in District 2, and that's the reason I think that we should make these moves.
Thank you, Councilmember. I only wish the residents around Branham and Monterey thought it was District 2. I've spent countless hours speaking with hundreds of them who know very well that they're in District 10, but I appreciate your comments. I mean, what concerns me and the reason I don't support the east-west split is that it basically creates this long, skinny finger of the district down along the ridge line, and it essentially socioeconomically divides these two districts, and it I think is a shame that we're gonna shift a neighborhood in Vista Park that has been a part of District 10, that shops in District 10, that uses transit that runs north-south, whose kids all go to school in a school district that runs north-south. And again, every other line across the city, we're moving a neighborhood or two. We're not shifting we're not completely reorienting districts. So I can't support the east-west split. I don't hear about a specific community of interest. Yes, there's slightly more renters in the northern part and slightly more homeowners in the southern part. I'm not sure that's how we should be drawing our district boundaries. So my motion is to retain the north-south boundary and to identify one or two logical adjacent neighborhoods that could move from D2 to D10 to address the population deviation.
Is that a motion or?
Yes, that's a motion.
All right. Is there a second? All right, the motion and second. I'll support that motion. I just want to ask Chris. Chris, under Councilmember Mahan's preferred option, which is the north-south line, which is, I think,
this line,
roughly the historic line of the district. That's what has been historic. The deviation drops considerably, doesn't it? Could you describe the difference between the deviations?
Sure. So I've put up on the map a purple layer. This is the alternative version of the map that uses the north-south split of between 2 and 10. So that would, I believe, that would be the motion would be to align it to this purple version between 2 and 10, and that drops the deviation from 10.3 to 9.1%.
Correct. And my motion further is stating that gives us, that restores the historical boundary, is in line with a number of things we've already described about transportation networks and school district lines that run north-south. And then at that point, if we still want to further reduce the population deviation, there are a number of neighborhoods along that north-south boundary that could quite logically, such as the one down along the ridge line where there is a neighborhood association that crosses the line, we could very easily move Glider over into District 10, for example, or look at another neighborhood along that line.
Yeah, I just wanted to really get to one very basic point, which is the threshold legal consideration here is reducing this deviation for a compliant map. And this change reduces that deviation, not by a little, but by a lot, more than 1%, 1.2%. Is that right, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. So I think it makes some sense. It certainly, for the reasons that Councilor Mahan articulated about communities of interest, it makes sense. It's certainly the historic line that folks are used to. I know that's not the driving consideration, but it doesn't hurt if people know which district they're in rather than being confused. So that's why I'm willing to support the motion. Councilor Cohen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say that we always want to default to what we know and what we're comfortable with as far as district lines. this process is the opportunity to reevaluate where those lines were drawn. And you know, some decades ago, lines were drawn, may have been arbitrary. There may have been some reasoning. There have been a lot of changes in the city in those decades. And if every cycle we say, well, our goal is to keep the lines where they are in all boundaries, we are not using this opportunity to do what may be better for the residents of the city. And obviously there can be disagreement on what's better or not better. But to me, where lines have been before is not a consideration. How we can articulate communities of interest, and I was very compelled by Councilmember Jimenez's articulation of the reason for the east-west boundary split, the one that I supported in the first place. I think it provides better cohesiveness between the districts, and you know, honestly, I can't. It's hard to look at the numbers on the fly in terms of balancing the numbers, but I know it's doable even in the east-west configuration to adjust the map to get the numbers right. And in fact, there are maps out there, including the one that I proposed last week and the one that's been proposed by some memos yesterday, that do just that, right? They bring the number range down below 8, below 7, below 5%. So the configuration is not the cause of deviation. There's fixes around the borders that can address the deviation. As far as keeping school districts together, I mean, while that's one of the goals, and I will just point out that because of D4 size and the changes in D4, I have 4 schools on the south edge of District 4 that are now split in half. I can name them if you'd like, but it's unfortunate. And the Orchard community, which is in a single school district, is being split by the map that we have in front of us. I'd prefer not to do that, but I know that based on demographics and other things and the changes in the city, that's an unavoidable situation. And you know, we can't make it be a test of ours that school district lines are always the boundary. So I won't be supporting this current motion. I'm supporting the lines as Councilmember Jimenez was proposing.
Councilmember Jimenez?
Yeah, I want to make a substitute motion, but I also want to just, as it relates to school district lines, I mean, the existing lines that currently exist for District 2, District 10 already have schools that are in, say, the Oak Grove School District, but fall into District 10, or schools that are within San Jose, or schools that are within, well, actually several schools that are within Oak Grove School District that fall within District 10, where the majority of Oak Grove School District students are actually in District 2. Additionally, there's other parts of District 2 in which we have actually schools from Morgan Hill Unified. And so, you know, I think we're grasping for straws here if what we're, you know, if what's mentioned is school district boundaries and such, you know, I don't think that we should be making any decisions based on that. So I'd like to make a substitute motion to keep the east-west alignment.
And there's a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Cohen. Councilor Jimenez, do you want to do it in this motion or a subsequent motion to include neighborhoods that will adjust to deal with the variance?
Well, you know, I assume one of the challenges I have with just presuming that we're going to need to move neighborhoods from District 2 into District 10 is just, I know there's other changes that are going to take place. So I suspect that there may be wiggle room and other sort of spaces, if you will,
okay,
to get that down. And so I just like to make a motion for the east-west alignment, and then the discussion as to anything else, we'll leave it for a little further down the line.
Okay, so just a clean motion, substitute. Councilmember Perales?
Yeah, thank you. Well, we may resolve this later then, but I was going to mention that the map that had been submitted by Councilmember Arenas and Esparza and Carrasco had a pretty similar map to what we're talking about now for D10. There were some changes over in the far west corner between D9 and D10. So I was going to suggest we could sort of move those boundaries. That may add the population that's needed, but if we'd prefer to do that next, we can do so. But I don't know if Councilmember Jimenez, if you had an opportunity to look at that. I'm struggling myself, kind of going back and forth between looking at the map that we had on the share screen here, which obviously we can't see. For instance, can you move the map on the share screen, because it doesn't even necessarily show the corner I'm talking about. So kind of having the map on the share screen is difficult because we can't quite see or manipulate, I think, as easily ourselves to kind of determine where there may be some ability to move. But what was most logical to me and already presented in a map was this far west region between D9 and D10. And so I'll ask Councilor Jimenez, would you like to maybe consider that change now, or do you want to stick with your motion and then consider it later?
Councilmember Perales, sorry about that. I guess I didn't quite hear exactly what the change was. Without you having to go through all that again, can you just briefly state what the change was that you're asking me if I'm okay with?
Well, I'll have to ask our map share there, if you don't mind, Chris, zooming in to the far west corner of D10, top northwest corner of D10.
Oh, are you referring to the Fox Chase area as a potential area that we can take in? The District
I'm not
10?
sure if that's the name of it, but possibly.
Yeah, right there. Right.
No, it's literally the far west. So you're not at the far west, you're at the northern kind of west. I'm talking about, yeah, that corner right there. Nope. District 10 is, yeah, that area there. There was the map that was presented by Councilmember Arenas, and it includes, and you can, Chris, if it helps, you can pull up that map. Actually, everybody can pull up that map because it's on Districtor and take a look at what I'm talking about. That's what I'm doing. I'm just sort of going back and forth. And it's that portion right there. I don't know if it includes anything else. I'm trying to zoom in and out.
This is the blue line is the I'm calling it the ACE map because it's presented by 3 council members. So that would be the change here to between District 10 and District 9.
That is very clever, Chris. Arenas, Carrasco, and Esparza. I like that.
So Councilmember Perales, are you asking me if I want to include in my motion to include that?
I am, because I just knew that we were trying to also address population in District 10.
Correct. So I was thinking that we'd have this conversation a little later, but yeah, I'm willing to include in my substitute motion inclusion of Dartmouth and that area that's before us on the screen to write the numbers in District 10.
Okay, thank you. That's my friendly amendment. I appreciate you accepting it. Thanks.
Councilman Jimenez, for whatever it's worth, I actually would have been willing to support your substitute motion if it were a clean motion as you described. Now we're moving boundaries in District 9, and I'm not eager to do that. So I know you'll think through all this as we continue to go through the discussion, but I would prefer to support a clean substitute motion rather than one that didn't move other boundaries. Councilmember, let's see here, Councilmember Mahan?
Yeah, I'll just make the point quickly. I mean, I can see, just based on the conversation with Councilmembers Jimenez and Cohen, I mean, I can see that we are heading toward a reorientation of east-west that, as I've said, I don't support. And the primary reason, just to be clear, is not school districts or anything else. It's what I'm hearing from residents, right? I've heard from hundreds of residents, and I can count on one hand the number who've said they think that the east-west split makes sense. So that's what's motivating me is my staff and I spend a lot of time in the northern part of the district. I actually live right in the middle of the district, and residents in the northern part of the district who I've spoken with, and we've done a lot of outreach, don't understand why such a drastic move. So that's why I don't support the reorientation. That being said, just based on this most recent proposal from Councilmember Perales, I think we ought to actually have a separate conversation about how we address the population deviation. What it looks like we're now heading toward, if we do go east-west, is a small, awkward pocket of what would be the new boundary south of or under 85 there, that would much more logically belong with District 10. So I would, anyway, I'm going to vote against the east-west switch, the substitute motion. I've explained why. I don't think my constituents want it. I haven't heard a compelling reason. But I also can count the votes here and see where we're heading. If we're going to make that shift, please give us the opportunity to then discuss which neighborhoods should stay together after that change. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Foley?
Thank you. I too was ready to support the substitute motion, but not with adding in the Dartmouth area of D9. And the reason for that is I believe there should be a separate conversation. District 9 is underpopulated, and so if you take the Dartmouth area away, that just makes the underpopulation even greater and affects the ability to do anything with Canoas if that is a consideration of this council. So if Canoas is more important to move back to D6, then leaving Dartmouth alone as it is in D9 makes sense, because you don't have to then play with more population in D9 and finding more residents in D9 to offset what may happen in Canoas. So Councilmember Jimenez, I really want to support your motion, but I can't with the Dartmouth inclusion.
All right. Councilmember Cohen?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to what Councilmember Foley said. I think the discussion later about where to move from should happen, but until we know what we're going to do with the other changes that are kind of could cause a ripple effect, it's hard for me to support reducing the population in District 9 until we know what our goals are in the north end of District 9. So, and I was the seconder, I think, of Councilmember Jimenez's motion. So I'd prefer, just as Councilmember Jimenez said in the first place, to leave the question of how to balance the population to a separate discussion and just vote on the orientation. So I won't accept the friendly amendment.
Okay, that was my mistake in not checking with the secretary. I'm sorry. Councilmember Jimenez?
Yeah, let me just say that, listen, I appreciate the comments. I think in the spirit of collaboration and consensus building, hopefully folks are okay with this, but what I would say is, let's remove that from consideration. We'll move that to another part of the conversation a little further down during the course of this meeting. But what I would just say is that if I want folks to be open to have a discussion as to whether we need to increase the population in District 10, not necessarily assuming it's going to come from District 2 and trying to figure out, being open to having a discussion about it coming from District 9, I think is what I would like. So if folks are okay with that, I'd remove it from the.
And I can't get it. I can't
Okay,
get it
just,
in.
if I could ask everyone to mute, please. Councilmember Esparza, if you could mute, please. Thank you.
Sorry.
So I would just say, in that spirit of collaboration, I'll retract that. I'll retract the acceptance of that from Councilmember Perales. We'll leave the discussion as to where to increase the population for District 10, whether it be District 2 or District 10 or District 9 in the future during the course of the conversation. We'll leave that there, and then we'll just move forward with the east-west alignment, a clean version of this.
Okay, the substitute motion then is a clean motion. Councilmember Perales?
I was going to withdraw it. I agree with my colleagues, so I'll
You beat you
support.
to it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Finally, I think that exhausts all the comments. So let's vote on the substitute motion then from Councilmember Jimenez.
And that's to retain east-west boundary.
Yes, this is to retain the east-west boundary on, or to take the proposed east-west boundary between Districts 2 and 10 that is in the council approved map.
Okay. Jimenez?
Yes.
Perales?
Yes.
Cohen?
Aye.
Roscoe? I'm going to come back. Roscoe, make sure you hit *6 to unmute. Davis?
No.
Esparza?
Yes.
Arenas?
Yes.
Foley?
Aye.
Mahan?
No.
Jones?
Aye.
Liccardo?
Aye.
Roscoe? You may need to text me your vote if you can't unmute.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Aye.
So that motion passes. as I see it, there are at least two issues that are still unresolved. One is dealing with the general deviation challenge we have, and the second is addressing the Canoas Gardens issue. And I'd like to ask for some clarity from our attorneys just to make sure we're all clear about when race should be a driving consideration in redistricting and when it should not be. And as I understand it, and Nora or Mark, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, that when there is a district of concern under the Voting Rights Act, then race may be a driving consideration. But when there is not, race should not be a driving consideration. Is that accurate?
That's an accurate statement. If there's a concern about minority vote dilution to comply with the Voting Rights Act, then you can consider race and ethnicity in drawing boundaries. But if it's not, then race and ethnicity should not be a consideration over all other factors, but could be characterized as communities of interest.
Okay. So as we look at districts 6 and 9, are either of those districts of concern under the Voting Rights Act, based on what we know of the demographics?
No, we haven't identified any concern with that.
Okay. But there are other districts that are. For example, District 7 or District 4 are. Is that correct?
Those are potential concerns.
Okay. So when you try to determine what is of concern under the Voting Rights Act, I assume that you're to look at the district and not individual neighborhoods. Is that correct in terms of determining whether or not you should be addressing this threshold question, should race be a driving consideration?
Yes, you would look at the district as you're proposed to draw it, and then you would look at the composition of the voters in that district and surrounding areas, and you're looking at the citizen voting age population for the purposes of the Voting Rights Act, not necessarily total population.
Right, so this, the eligible, the citizens who are old enough to vote.
Correct.
Okay. And so if you can conceivably draw a district that might be a Voting Rights Act district of concern, then you should be considering race, or you may consider race. And if you can't draw that line in a way that you get that kind of district, you shouldn't.
Correct. One of the factors in a VRA case is whether or not the group that you're looking at is compact enough, meaning they're large enough in order to form such a district in a particular area.
Okay. And as you talk to the folks who are giving you the demographic data, what tells you whether or not a district is a Voting Rights Act district of concern?
Well, there's two factors. One, the first one I mentioned, are they compact and large enough to form a majority-minority district, so 50+1? And then the other one is whether there's evidence of racially polarized voting, meaning does the group vote for their candidate of choice, and is a group in opposition voting in opposition or for another candidate of choice?
Okay, so under that two-prong analysis, threshold question is are there enough voting age residents, citizens that are from that particular ethnic or racial group to be able to somehow get within spitting distance of being a majority-minority district. Is that right?
Yeah, if we're talking about the Canoas Garden District 6 and 9, the area is quite diverse, and so no one group in that area would be sufficient to form a majority.
Okay. And I guess more importantly, as we look at the two districts where we're trying to hash out where the Canoas Gardens would go, District 6 and District 9, is there any chance that District 6 or District 9 could be a Voting Rights Act district of concern as any boundaries have been drawn so far?
No, not in that particular area. Both districts are majority white, but to the extent that the Canoas Garden area is a community of interest, then it could be treated, and kept together for the purpose of redistricting.
Okay. So as I understand it, based on our legal requirements, we have been considering race in those areas where we know the Voting Rights Act indicates race may be a concern. And while we might conceive of communities of interest that have racial dimension, that's undoubtedly true. Race cannot be a driving consideration in the formation of districts where you do not have the Voting Rights Act issues arise. And as I understand it, in Districts 6 and 9, those issues are not present. They're present in other parts of our city. So I appreciate the very serious concern that many have had about how we redistrict in this area. But as I understand it, following the law, that is not the driving consideration. Race is not the driving consideration in those districts. All right, so we have that issue. We have the issue of what to do about the deviation overall in population. And so we can certainly take comments or motions on those. Councilmember Cohen.
Yeah, let me just follow up on those questions. What you were saying is that race can't be a driving consideration, but I heard you say race can be a consideration. Is that correct? Is that a correct assessment?
In the context of a community of interest, for example, if you have a historically ethnic neighborhood or perhaps a diverse neighborhood relative to all other surrounding areas, then to the extent it's considered a community of interest, then it could be treated as such.
So there's nothing violative if members of the council say because of that historic and nature of that area or that racial makeup of that area that a majority wants it in one district versus the other. I mean, there would be nothing. There wouldn't be a problem with using the consideration of who's in that neighborhood and then deciding where it should go.
If couched in terms of as a community of interest, then that's an appropriate consideration under both the Charter and the Fair Maps Act.
Right.
Race and ethnicity, however, just can't be a predominant factor in redistricting over all other criteria. And so to the extent that group is not a community of interest and race is being used, then that could be considered if there's not a VRA issue, it would be considered an impermissible racial gerrymander.
How do we know? You're saying if it's a community of interest or not. Is there a strict definition of what a community of interest is? A community of interest is often subjective. It's what you as a group would determine to be a community of interest, but it does have to be related to a particular core group in a particular area, either social, economic perhaps. They just can't be different areas of the city, for example, can't be considered a community of interest because they're together. So for example, a neighborhood on the east side and the west side, because they're far apart, even though they may share similar interests, would not be considered a community of interest. Right. Okay. And then the other question, I think, just for clarification, I've come to understand that there have been concerns raised about whether some districts are becoming having too many white voters. There is not in fact, it is compliant with the Voting Rights Act to increase the white voter population in one district at the expense of another, right?
That can be permissible if being done in order to comply with the Voting Rights Act. You can underpopulate majority districts in order to reach that 50+1 or minority influence in that particular district. So it is appropriate to do it if it's being done to comply with the Voting Rights Act.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Arenas.
Great. Well, thank you, Councilmember Cohen, for clearing that up. So I'm not going to jump back into that question. This is a group of folks who are primarily renters, and so as seen as a core group. Aside from that, there's a lot of this change was made on the fly by council members. It wasn't vetted by community throughout the commission, the work of the commission. So one, it lacks that community input. But aside from that, I think Councilmember Cohen just really laid it out nicely. So I won't go back there. So I do want to make a motion to use our, I think you called it our ACE memo boundary. So the Arenas Carrasco Esparza boundary for D69. And Chris, I think you have the border in your software. So if you could access that. And then, so that just really returns Canoas into the Willow Glen area. And that's my motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Arenas.
Second.
That was Councilmember Carrasco. Okay. The next speaker is Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Councilmember Foley and I are in a Brown Act on this issue, and we've discussed this issue at length. I want to be very clear to set the record straight about the boundary between D6 and D9 as we had discussed it with the council. It is the almost exact same boundary that the commission map had. Almost completely identical, including the Canoas Garden area, which is really 3 areas, and it is not majority renter. It is split. There are many, many single-family homes in that area. The reason that Councilmember Foley and I made the changes that we did is because the population in that Canoas Garden, and this is actually named very strangely, the Canoas Garden and Almaden and the Farm and Rubino Drive areas that are being discussed right now have a population of over 8,000 people, and District 9 had to increase its population. District 6 had to absorb some District 3 population because District 3 and District 4, which share a boundary, both had to shed population. I don't think I got any of District 4, but there was some discussion of that at some point. So I ended up having to move my boundary by quite a bit to the north to absorb all of the areas around the airport, and to the east as well, to make 87 the boundary. So that I now have Delmas Park, a new neighborhood, as well as Gardner, which is just to the north of my own neighborhood. So that everyone there is, I think, hopefully happy that we're all going to be reunited as we were under the Strong Neighborhoods Initiative. The only consideration for what on the map is called Canoas and Almaden and Farm and Rubino Drive, which is it's a strange way it's denoted there, but is the population was compact, sufficient, and one specific school where all of those people attend, so that it would be a very easy place for District 9 to absorb, as opposed to Lincoln and Roy and Cherry and Dry Creek and Bagby all being absorbed. And I got many, many letters saying, please don't do that, because these are parts of Willow Glen, and Willow Glen was at one time its own incorporated city, and I will tell you, people still think of it as its own town. And Councilmember Foley and I both live in Willow Glen, but the majority of Willow Glen has been represented by District 6 for many years, and they have their own schools. There are actually 3 schools in this area that would move into District 9, and some of the schools that are in this area have attendance to the north as well. So that would split. Again, the whole purpose of this was to keep with the commission map boundaries as much as possible. There were some little bit over in the Bagby area and the Willowvale area that District 9 needed to retain, again, for numbers, which we thought was important. Now, to the question of the Voting Rights Act issues and the dilution, I think I heard you say, Mark, that when you look at the changes, you're supposed to look at how the overall voting age population percentages change when you make the changes. Is that correct?
That'll be that's one of the factors that you're looking at to see whether or not the group can constitute a majority in a particular area of a district.
Okay, so the voting age population, I think other means Caucasian, is that correct?
Yes, other means Caucasian, as well as I think Middle Eastern descent would be included in that as well.
Okay, so the current map, the that I currently represent, let's be clear about that. For the 2020 population, the voting age population of white is 60.7%. The council map, as we discussed it last week, and without Councilmember Arenas' motion, goes from 60.7% white voting age population to 59.1% voting age population. So it goes down a little bit. The Latino voting age population goes from 21.4% up to 22.9%. Asian goes from 13.5% to 13.3%. So it's almost the same. The Black population, this again, voting age population, goes from 4.4% to 4.6%. So the map, as Councilmember Foley and I drew it, and which is really the way the commission drew it, was, so it has been vetted with 42 hours of public comment and an 11-0 vote on the commission, which I don't think we should just completely disregard, takes the voting age population for white from 60.7 down to 59.1%, which is actually lower than the commission map, and Latino from 21.4% up to 22.9%. The other two have a 0.2% difference. So I won't be supporting the motion, and I'm very concerned about what happens with Willow Glen, which has told me repeatedly with hundreds of emails, and I'm not even exaggerating when I say hundreds, and Tony's nodding her head because she got them. On the low end, I will say it was over 200, where the request was, please keep Willow Glen boundaries where they are. They're not even asking for all of Willow Glen to be in one district, which, by the way, 10 years ago was what they were asking for. And they didn't get it. They're just saying, keep it the same. So I think it's important for us to respect the will of that community and still solve the issue that we have with low numbers in District 9. I will not support the motion on the floor.
All right, Councilmember Foley.
Sorry, I actually forgot I pushed my button because I've been looking at this map. You know, I am looking at the D9, D6 boundaries and Canoas Gardens, and when I saw the commission map and the community map actually include Canoas Garden, and my initial thought was, what? Why D9 and district and Canoas Garden? But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know, several council members have already referred to the whiteness of District 9, and I don't disagree with that. But I also embrace the opportunity to work with a community that is more diverse than your average Cambrian Willow Glen neighborhood. So I'm going to vote no on the motion because I truly believe that we can that District 9 and our staff can truly represent Canoas Garden, Farmer Bino, that area, and offer them some services and advocacy that they need. The other thing is that if we do remove Canoas Gardens from District 9, then we need to make up territory in the Willow Glen area. And as Councilmember Davis said, she's getting a lot of emails, so am I getting a lot of emails from people who really want Willow Glen united. Willow Glen is too big of a community to unite, and historically, where I live, 1 block south of Houston, which is the dividing line, it's been that way since I've lived in that house for 31 years. So back to the days of Jim Bell, he was my council member in D9 so many years ago. So I'm having trouble giving up Canoas Gardens because I'd really like the opportunity to represent them and believe that we can do so. And then I look at the Willow Glen map and I said, okay, if we give up that, where do we go? And I don't have a solution there. So I'm going to vote no on the motion.
All right. See here. Councilmember Mahan?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate the comments from Council Members Davis and Foley, and I find them compelling. I also think that when it comes to population deviation and the challenge we need to solve there, it's down in District 10. And so what I'd recommend is that I'd like to make a substitute motion. I'd like to move that we keep the District 6, District 9 boundary where it is, as Councilmember Davis has just so eloquently articulated a reason for. And I think we can solve the population density issue, deviation issue in District 10 by moving and I need to, sorry, on my computer I have the wrong map up, but maybe we can put it up on the screen.
Yeah, Chris.
Chris, yeah, just under 85, south of, I believe that's south, yeah, south of 85 there where Parma Park is. And I'd be interested to know, just population-wise, how much needs to move. But I think just uniting all of the Palma Park area there, as you were just scrolling over under 85, just that section.
Yeah, so I actually did the population shift. So if you moved this portion below 85 to, to this line,
yep,
to unify Palmia Park.
Palmia, yes.
Palmia, it's a shift of 3,090 people.
Okay.
And in this configuration, that would make District 2 at 3.9% underpopulated and District 10 at 2.26 underpopulated.
Okay.
So it would fix the population total population deviation for this map.
Okay, so that solves the problem. And then let me just ask, this is secondary, but if you just scroll slightly over to the right, slightly east, there's still this section under 85 that is disconnected. I don't think we want to push the population higher. Is there a lot of population in there, in that, or is that just the hospital?
In here?
Yeah.
I think the population is here.
Is there any?
Let's see. Sorry. There are like 1,200 people.
Okay. So maybe that pushes it too far. Okay, well then why don't we just stick with that one little section? So my substitute motion is to keep 6 and 9 boundary where it is, and let's address our greatest area of population deviation there at Palmia Park.
All right, motion from Councilor Mahan, second from Councilor Davis. That's a substitute motion. Okay. Tony, you've got that. Okay, great. So we'll move on now to Councilmember Arenas. Councilmember, you may be muted right now if you're trying to speak.
Oh, sorry. That was from before, but now that I have the floor, I do want to correct that, or just add to the picture, not correct, because obviously what the council members are stating is their perspective and their experience and their petitions from their residents. And I also want to say that along with maybe the want from Willow Glen residents to remain the same in the same boundaries. In the last week, we also have had 325 emails that were sent supporting this D6, D9 change that I'm suggesting. We also heard from stakeholders all night long yesterday. And they represent hundreds of other community members that see this, that support the change from the Councilmember Carrasco and the Sparks and myself memo. So I just wanted to add that to the overall picture. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's vote on the substitute motion.
Inez?
No.
Peralez,
No.
Cohen,
Aye.
Crosco,
No.
Davis,
Yes.
Esparza,
No.
Arenas,
No.
Foley,
Aye.
Mahan,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Liccardo.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Are there any, okay, so that is now amended to address the deviation. Where are we in our deviation right now, Chris?
Let me make that change and I'll give you an update in like
Okay. In the
shortly.
meantime, do you need some time?
I need like 30 seconds.
Okay. We can wait that long.
Mayor, can I ask a process question?
Sure.
in the meantime?
Councilmember Esparza?
Thank you. At the end of this, today or on the 11th is the second hearing, correct? So at the end of today, this session, are we going to have the opportunity to look at process in the future and address how we ended up with 3 maps after such a long commission process?
I will second that motion.
Okay, all right.
Like
I'll
prohibiting
go
more
ahead.
than one map?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think we're all, like I said, I do appreciate Vice Mayor's consistent comments on that, and I think we're all a little frustrated.
Agreed.
Okay, I have the total deviation of this current map with that change between District 2 and District 8 is now at 8.78%, so well below the 10% threshold.
Okay. So that is a positive development. All right. Any other motions to be brought? Councilmember Jimenez?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Chris if you would consider doing something with the map to see if the deviation would change without adding in Palmia. And I realize that was the motion that just passed, but Chris, if you can pull up the map, I want to direct you to a particular area in District 2 where I thought I had my hand raised when we voted, but my apologies if I didn't. But so we brought in Palmia there, but if you go to the right and if you can zoom in.
So just let me check. Let me undo that change and then we'll start back fresh before.
No problem. So if you go to the far west of District 10, the new District 10 boundary, if you will.
Okay.
Or sorry, east. My apologies. East.
Okay.
To the right. Got it.
Yeah, to the right. That's probably easy. So if you zoom in there to the Los Paseos area.
Yes.
I believe that block, if you look to the right, it says Coyote Creek there. I think that's Tulare Hill. So right there where you have the cursor right now, that area.
Should we call that Metcalf?
I'm sorry?
Can we call that Metcalf?
Yeah, we can call that Metcalf, yeah.
Okay.
And so I'm curious what that would do and how it would play out as if we brought that in instead of Palmia.
So just this portion here below Monterey?
Exactly. There's some condos and stuff there. I'm not quite sure what the population is like, but
let's see. So that would shift around 1,000 people. And I think it would bring everything, it would bring District 10 to 4.3%. So that would be a 1% change. And then I think so the map would now be at, instead of 8.78, would be at 9.78.
Okay. And would you, so is it a viable option? I mean, it's closer to the 10, but it falls under.
Yeah. So, I mean, we would just basically, it would be, it'd be 9.11, I think. So we'd be fine.
Okay. So let me just mention that one of the reasons I'm not interested in bringing in Palmia is that I think if we bring this section in, I think it would address what we're interested in doing. But the other aspect of this is that I actually live in Palmia. And so I'd like, to the extent possible, to stay within District 2, although I know there's policies in place to prevent me from being essentially evicted from District 2, if you will. So that's the reason I think this change makes more sense. If what we're truly interested in addressing is that deviation, which I think this meets based on what Chris is saying. And so Mayor, I guess, given that the motion has been made to bring in Palmia, I voted against it. Do we need to reconsider it, or someone on the prevailing side to motion to reconsider and to change this, or what's the way procedurally to address this?
Councilor Jimenez, if you want to make a motion to move some more neighborhoods, you can make that motion.
Okay, well, I'll make the motion to bring Palmia back into District 2 and instead add this area into District 10.
Okay, so Metcalf goes to District 10 and Palmia goes to District 2.
Yeah.
Okay, and is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, and I think it borders Monterey Road, so it actually fits quite nicely into just cleaning up those boundaries anyway, so.
Right, so it draws the line down Monterey.
Correct.
Okay, so everybody clear on what that motion is? We're essentially swapping Palmia and Metcalf. Okay, Councilmember Perales, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I actually wanted to peek at the map around D3, so if you just could keep my hand up, maybe after we vote on this.
Okay, we'll come back to that then in a moment. Chris, can you just clarify again, that swap, what does it do in terms of net population to District 10?
Sorry. So this change, moving the Metcalf and below Monterey, shifts 986 people from District 2 into District 10 and results in District 10 being underdeviated by total or population by 4.3%. And District 2 would then be underpopulated by 1.8%.
All right, so just to understand better, 986 people are in Metcalf and they move to District 10, and 3,090 people of voting age, or I'm sorry, not just people, we're just talking people here, 3,090 people move back to District 2 from Palmia, is that right?
Right.
Okay, could I make a suggestion, Councilmember Jimenez? Do you want to perhaps take on something that would move a more substantial population? I mean, in addition to Metcalf, since our goal is here is trying to reduce the deviation.
Can you repeat that? Sorry, my internet.
It was a question for Councilmember Jimenez.
Okay, sorry.
About whether, and perhaps Councilmember Mahan may want to weigh in on this, but whether there's any other additional neighborhoods that would be added because we're fundamentally trying to address a deviation issue with District 10 being the low, and moving only 1,000 people isn't quite as good as moving 3,000 people if that's the problem we're trying to solve.
Okay, so how about this? Chris, if you can go to, I think there's a potential solution here. If you go to the left, and you'll see Kaiser, well, it doesn't say Kaiser actually, but.
Actually, it would be right. I think Kaiser was just moved off this map, so you want to go back.
It's right there where Palmia was, just to the right.
Yeah, exactly. So to the right of Palmia.
Is there a way to zoom in and get a little bit more clearer lines? That'd be helpful. So Villard Jokes. So Kaiser is there where your cursor is. So I'd like to keep, Kaiser's been in District 2 forever, have a strong relationship with everyone there, been doing a lot of work as it relates to some of the road work on International Circle, on and on. What if there was a line drawn just to the right of Kaiser, right there where you see the little 85 indicator on the freeway? You draw that line and then you bring the area to the right there. Let's see. So if you bring, sorry, it's difficult to guide you while doing this. Let me.
So is it this area here?
Yeah, to the right, or just you see, yeah, to the right there.
Which says Hospital Parkway International Drive.
So not that. So leaving that in District 2, essentially right here. On the issue is right on the edge of Hospital Parkway. Yeah, all that. That's all. Not that, but yeah, that right there. If you go straight up and to the right. Not to the left, but to the right.
Okay. Oh, this way.
It'll
Sorry.
bring in an apartment complex that's there. That'll add more individuals.
Over here?
To the left a little bit. Yeah, that, you can leave that.
The problem is the census block. This is the shape. So it goes around the hospital. I think the hospital is here, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no population. Well, yeah.
Right. So we could do another, I think that most of the population is right here.
Correct.
So if we did this.
And you fill those in to the right, it's mainly industrial to the right of that.
Exactly. And then what we could do is another line cut here.
Correct. And leave this opening on the north end of the hospital to just make a district.
So it would be in two. That would, so this and the Metcalf change would get us to 1,700 people. So that would bring District 10 down to 3.5% under deviation and District 2 at 2.6% deviation.
So that seems to be a more well-balanced sort of approach, right? It gets us closer to.
Yes, like if we're just looking at total deviation, yes.
Okay, well, that would be the motion.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion's been amended for Councilmember Jimenez. Councilmember Perales, is that acceptable?
I'm trying to look at what could you draw it out what it?
I think what you see is the shaded areas, the pink areas there.
These would move into District 10. So this area south of Monterey would move in. And then what we do is the census block around the hospital includes both populated and unpopulated areas. So we'd move the unpopulated area above the hospital in this little shape, almost like a triangle, would move up would stay in District 2, but the populated areas, this area here, and then down south along 85, would move into District 10.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta admit it looks a little awkward, maybe just the way that I'm looking at it now. But for purposes of letting it go forward at the moment, yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Other members of council, since Councilmember Mahan, this is your district, do you have a view here?
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just still trying to wrap my head around these changes. Frankly, I don't, this is down in District 2. I don't know these neighborhoods as well. I guess at this point, I'm just thinking about contiguousness. Sorry, I'm tired.
Contiguity?
Contiguity, thank you.
Okay.
And compactness. So it looks a little funky. I think on the point about the hospital, I think we've agreed that where something in a district has been is not a good reason to keep it there. I think that was the very premise of this east-west shift. So, I'm okay with this. I'm not going to put up a big fight over this. I haven't looked at the demographic implications. I think it would be a little cleaner to connect the boundary all the way along 85 rather than have a little neighborhood there on one side of 85. But I can live with this for now, and we'll continue the conversation.
We do have a contiguity, I'm sure I'm misusing the word, a problem all the way in the south. It looks like an area where nobody lives. I could be wrong on that, but there are no streets just to on the far right bottom corner there. You see that parcel, it seems to be in the middle. I assume.
Yeah, that's just a hill, Mayor. It's just, it's called Tulare Hill. It's just open space.
Okay.
The water district owns some easements there.
I assume we can simply cure that line so we have a.
Correct.
All
Yeah,
right.
I mean, that one. And I'd be willing to throw in the hospital if Councilmember Mahan would support the motion.
I get a hospital in the mix. Okay.
Now we're beyond.
I mean, to be honest, for geographical compactness, you've got 85 there. I think it would make more sense. You've got neighborhoods kind of surrounding it, so it'd make more sense to me. I'd feel better about this change.
I'm sure they'll still talk to you, Councilmember Jimenez.
We'll still invite you
suspect
over.
they will.
Okay.
So you're supportive of throwing in the hospital, Councilmember Mahan, just to add some clarity there to those lines?
I think to keep the area compact, and we'll be sure to invite you over to any events at in the farmers market. I know there's a good farmers market there. So
Well, we're trying to move that out of the area, but I'll break the news to the hospital about what's happening.
all right. Thanks, council member.
The charter does not mention farmers markets as a consideration in redistricting. All right. Okay, so,
And I'm fine with that as the seconder.
okay, thank you, Councilor Prowse. All right, so we have a motion from Councilmember Jimenez. I don't see any hands up. Councilor Prowse, you're still on the other item, right? Okay.
That is correct.
All right, let's vote on Councilor Jimenez's motion.
Jimenez,
Yes.
Peralez,
Yes.
Cohen,
Aye.
Crosco,
Aye.
Davis,
Yes.
Esparza,
Yes.
Arenas,
Yes.
Foley,
Aye.
Mahan,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Liccardo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Peralez?
Chris, would you mind going up to the D3 boundaries?
Sure.
And to be quite honest, Mayor, I just haven't had a good look at it because we've been looking at Chris's share screen. So
Yeah.
it's, you know, I'm honestly just trying to get a look at the boundary and
I think he wants to go further north here.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to turn on the border. So
Okay.
the coloring is a little bit pink on pink. I don't like, so it's a little hard to see the difference.
so if you can start down at the south end with District 7, I think we had talked about this last time about incorporating a non-population mix of the South Campus of San Jose State.
I thought
Yes,
that was,
That'll be one request, because I don't think that's included in the current drawings.
I thought that's what council approved last week.
So one of the things is that it's not easy to split a census block, and it kind of undermines the ability to draw. So the change in Spartan Key, or the San Jose State complex and then the airport complex are both noted to make those changes in the final.
Okay, so I guess I wanted to make sure that that was part of the new map that we've agreed to today under the vice mayor. And if that is, and you're going to adjust that later, great.
It
So
is.
just to clear, okay, great. Can you go up to the northeast between District 4, 5, and 3?
So you want it right up here?
No, a little lower, but where it says Berryessa Flea Market, Bart.
Okay.
Kind of, right where your cursor just was. Yeah, around there. So you see that little weird sliver? That was in a no, bottom right, more right there.
Here?
Yeah, I don't know why that was kind of cut that way. I don't know what, I'm trying to kind of think of exactly. I think it was using the Penitentiary Creek, maybe that's why.
Yeah, I can.
But,
I mean,
but if you can just add that sliver back into District 3, I don't even know if there's population there, to be honest.
Just for the purpose of propriety, you want to just make a motion there, Councilmember Peralez?
Yes. So that, well, I didn't know if that, I think that might not be it. So this may be part of the motion.
Okay, all right. We'll consider this part of the motion.
Is there any population there, Chris?
15 people.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, the penitentiary is not a solid border. The street is a pretty solid border, so that I'd prefer to use.
Okay.
If you can zoom out a little bit. Okay, actually, that's it. So that'll be the only motion, Mayor. Just that small sliver cleanup.
Okay,
Second.
the motion and second. Let's vote on that motion.
Jimenez,
Yes.
Peralez,
Yes.
Cohen,
Aye.
Crosco,
Aye.
Davis,
Yes.
Esparza,
Yes.
Arenas,
Yes.
Foley,
Aye.
Mahan,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Liccardo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we have some options here. We can go to open forum. We can take another motion, or folks can think about it while we're going to open forum. But I know we got to get open forum done today before we can conclude. Councilor Frost, your hand's still up. Is that on? No. Okay. Councilmember Esparza?
Mayor, I wanted to go over the commission instructions that they were given and operate under. And I don't know if this is the right time to do that, if there are any other motions.
if you'd like to talk about how we can improve the process, could I make a recommendation that we do that another day when that's actually agendized and commissioners would actually know about it and be able to participate?
So that's why I wanted to bring this up, because I had mentioned it earlier and I didn't know if it was something that we could add to the 11th, although that's a second hearing. So that's why I'm bringing it up now.
Yeah, I'm happy to take a motion that we agendize that for discussion so then the commissioners and everybody can come and participate.
Okay, yeah, and it would be great. I'd like to move to agendize that for the 11th. And if the clerk can also ask the commission members for their input on how to improve the process, since we have a little bit of time. I'd also like to hear from them on ways that we could improve the process.
Second.
All right, motion and second, Councilmember Davis. Let's vote on that motion.
Jimenez,
Yes.
Perales,
Yes.
Cohen,
Aye.
Crosco,
Aye.
Davis.
Yes.
Esparza,
Yes.
Arenas,
Yes.
Foley,
Aye.
Mahan, Jones,
Aye.
Liccardo.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Let's go to open forum. And if someone has other thoughts, feel free to raise your hand in the meantime. I know we're all scheduled other items today, so.
Okay, this is a reminder that open forum is for items not on the agenda. Blair Beekman.
Hi, will I have 2 minutes?
Is it, Mayor, is it 1 or 2 minutes?
I think we are well over time. Let's go to 1 minute. I know all of us have appointments we've canceled that we need to get to.
Okay, so 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Thanks for all this work and effort. I hope, with all our current law enforcement questions, that we can very much be considering the ideas of reimagine and equity to better address our law enforcement concerns and really learn to include reimagine and equity at this time. With the ideas of PG&E and their weird solar ideas at this time, I hope we can rally to really ask them to not work in those terms. The same with the CPUC. Really direct your attention to the CPUC, ask them to make changes to not go forward with PG&E solar ideas, basically. And to conclude, in the spirit of talking about voting issues, I hope the future of council agenda items, we can talk how that can be more publicly accessible. If we want to talk about, consent calendar items or closed session reports or the city manager's report, that there needs to be a statement that these questions can be public questions if they want to have concerns. We have to work on accessibility next year. Thanks a lot.
Margaret Ma.
I'm not sure this is the right place to say this, but it's just a comment. I've been following the redistricting discussion since last night. And man, it's better than any TV I've ever seen.
This is for items. This is for items not on the agenda, not redistricting.
Okay, I just want to thank all the council members for diligently and thoughtfully working towards the best compromise map that balances all the different points of view. This is the way democracy should work.
Tessa Woodmansey, and remember, this is not for redistricting comments. This is for items not on the agenda. Tessa, go ahead. Tessa?
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. Tessa Woodmansey. Yeah, I was just wanted to comment on our general plan as it goes towards jobs, and we have to stop that. And even the fact that we, I'm glad we made the change for affordable housing.
Tessa, you spoke on that topic last night. This is for items not on the agenda.
Whatever, it's about general plan. It's
right, which was on the agenda last night.
Yeah, but okay, I'm just talking about the content of our agenda. Okay, so I'll talk about, reset the clock if you want to correct me. I'm saying that, we need to be focusing on climate crisis and resiliency. I don't go to restaurants. I don't go shopping. We need to change. This is the change. It's all about the rich and that they want to have a nice place to go out to coffee and out to eat. But we're not dealing with the people in terms of what we need. And we need basic needs is food, clothing, and shelter. And we need to start growing food locally. And I've been saying that.
Jill Borders.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly say that I hope in the future, if anyone gets a chance to watch on YouTube some of the California's conversations on reparations for Black and African American people, I am wholeheartedly in favor of San Jose supporting any reparations at all. As we have these really challenging and painful discussions about redistricting, it brings to mind that until we actually have financial reparations for communities that in the past were so marginalized, we must do this. We must support this any way we can, and we need to find ways to talk about it as a city. So if you can go online and watch some of those proceedings, you'll find them so amazing and right on point to where our city needs to look as well. Thank you.
Alina.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you again for all of your hard work in listening to the community on this. And what I've noticed, the common theme in regards to complaints is the lack of clarity on process. So thank you for elevating discussions on process for redistricting. However, I would like to point out on January 11th, we're supposed to hear about the Charter Review Commission's recommendations. And there are a lot of items on there that are to be discussed, and I would anticipate a lot of public comment. So actually, I would suggest moving the discussions on process of how to improve commission work to another date, and maybe including the commissioners on a charter review as well, because we've had the same sorts of themes of lack of clarity on process and how to best to engage the community. And so I'd really like to make sure that the Charter Review Commission and their recommendations get the spotlight and time that they deserve on January 11th. And if you could also share the process of charters and how things go on the ballot, that would be really.
Todd W.
Hi, I just wanted to make a suggestion, and I know this might sound a little bit harsh, but at all the meetings, sometimes 5+ council members thank staff or thank for the work, and we're limited from 2 minutes to 1 minute. If you cut the thanks and maybe did that privately, it would allow more time for the public. Thank you.
Back to the council.
Thank you. Councilor Esparza, your hand is up. Okay.
Oops, no, that's from earlier.
From
I'm
earlier.
lowering it.
Okay. All right, then our meeting is adjourned.